This conference will now be recorded.
All right, John. Well, I get the sense that we could probably go ahead and start. I haven't heard any additional people come in yet, but I'm sure there might be a few that join us over the next couple of minutes. But I'd say we could probably go ahead and get started. Thank you, everybody, for being able to make the call today, and also Rick for joining the team from Fisheries. Appreciate you being able to make yourself available to participate within the group. It looks like we are having a few more people dial in, but John, I guess I will turn that back over to you, or I guess the first one will be Ken, correct, with the VIT issue updates?
Yeah, this is Ken. So let me go ahead and see if I can share my screen with you guys. Okay. All right, welcome. So you guys are seeing a VLab homepage, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So a couple different things have been rolled out recently. One is that the new homepage is live. It's much more dynamic. Hopefully we've gotten some good feedback. I haven't gotten any negative feedback, so that's good. So that's out there, and that hopefully will help people and make it more of a dynamic location. So that's there. Go ahead.
There was some slight negative feedback. We'll call it negative, but the feedback from Eastern region was that this is a nice new layout, but that some of the important links should be highlighted, as opposed to needing to scroll down to them.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm not quite sure how to address that, other than we can, if there are specific ones that that you think people are going to need, routinely, then we could try to pull those up.
The feedback was provided, so if there's a question about the feedback, I'd love to hear it. Not on this call, but
sure.
Separate.
All right, we'll get back with you. So, okay. So there's so I should clarify. Most of the feedback was positive. The other change that was rolled out had to deal with the new theme within Redmine. We did get some feedback there, and we've taken that into account. Specifically, there were some issues dealing with the width of the sidebar, and that's been reduced based upon the feedback. There was also some feedback on the font size within the wikis, and then within the capitalization within the projects themselves. So all of the, I'll have to go back through and confirm, but all of the issues that, I don't want to say every issue that's been identified, because not all of them were consistently across the board something that we wanted to do, but for issues where we had multiple different groups coming in and saying, hey, this would be better this way, we've made that change, and or made those changes, I should say. And so hopefully, we've addressed that. We'll need to get an update out in the announcement so that people know that the fixes are in place and we've listened to the feedback. So again, overall, the consensus has been positive with regard to the theme. Changes, I did find a minor issue yesterday, and I'll roll that out today with regard to relationships within issues. It wasn't possible to remove the relationships, and that was something we just missed. So anyway, so those are those two. Any questions or comments on the Redmine theme? Okay.
I wanted to, Ken, we appreciate it and appreciate the changes to make further improvements. So yeah, if you can get an announcement out about it, that's great.
Yeah, and like we said, we're always striving to improve. So, the system is designed in such a way that if additional items are identified, we'll work to getting those updates out there. So that's one of the nice things about the design is that we don't have to wait for some other system to get small tweaks and things out there to fix issues. So, all right. Then, in terms of other issues, I'm switching the way in which the team does their development, in that some of us have been using more of an agile approach, and I'm trying to implement the agile approach across the board, use the agile tools within our project, and so we're just starting that this week. We'll have our first meeting concerning that tomorrow. And the reason I raise it here is that it might mean that if you're an advocate for some of these vid issues, one of the major tenets of agile development is that the customer and the customer representative plays an active role in the cycle, and is a engaged partner in making these things move forward. And so what does that mean? It means that if we're working a task that you've sponsored and are advocating for, we'll be coming to you for feedback on having you take a look at it within our development environment to make sure it's along the lines of what you were thinking. Also, working through and making sure that we have a good understanding of the use case. So be looking for that, and so that I think will be a positive change. We're going through, we have quite a backlog of issues, and so we're just starting to make a dedicated effort to clean some of that up so that we have a good way of identifying the issues that are need to be addressed. So anyways, so we're starting that process. Some of the issues that we've got that we're currently working on, there are a few vid issues that are actively being engaged. One of them is getting close to the point where it can actually, it's ready for more testing, and that is, it was the accordion. Let me pull that up. Sorry. So if we come over here and projects, activity. So accordion, structured template. Okay. So this was previously, this is a VIT issue, 51682, accordion web content navigation structure and template. Previously, we had manual steps that would require people to go through and set things up. We've developed 2 portlets that you basically add to a page, and all of the configuration is greatly simplified, and it supports, and so let me just show you what I mean by that. So if we come back over to our development environment, okay, and we'll go out into, I believe we've got it within our support team community. Okay, and so these 2 portlets were added to the page. Let me disable that so it doesn't do that. And basically, when you put those on the page now, all that you have to do is go and configure each of these, and you can change, and this is a significant improvement. It used to be quite complex and was confusing for people to set up. But the idea is that you have two different portlets on a page. It goes out and looks at web folders within the community, and you can then select, so you would click on that, and then the item that you select on shows up on the right. So this is all listing out the folders within the community for web content, and it picks those up. Now it's possible to go in and change the order of those folders. It also supports hierarchical structure, and then we can present it in this format here, or let me show you the other. So in terms of the configuration, so you can see within here, there's the sorting is allowed, and then you can choose the folder, the root folder that you want to display. So if you have multiple folders within your community and you want to use a different structure for each, you can do that. And then the menuing style, you can switch between accordion and tree style. You can also go in and change the order of, within each of these, you can select these and then change the order in which those articles or folders that you have within that show up. So it's very customizable, easy to configure, and so it's a significant improvement. So we're just going through the latest round of testing on that, and then once it passes our testing, we'll be able to roll that out to production and make that available for our community owners to utilize. So I think this will be a significant improvement in terms of giving users another tool and way to see it. So you can see here, this is how this view shows up. So the tree type view. So that's that. So that's good. That's well on its way. The other two issues that are currently being worked have to do with the My Communities and the way we deal with line offices. And so two of the developers and myself met yesterday regarding those issues. And so we're moving forward there. And so that's issue. Let me show you the issue there. Issues, I'm sorry, activity. Okay. And so improvements to the My Communities VLab page. And so this one had, it's gone through several iterations. One of them, of the requests was, and this was from about 3 months ago, that the order should be, within My Communities, should be the order visited, with the most recent being at top. And I just remind the VIT that now we have the select community option up here, and the default behavior here is that the most recent community that you went to is at the top. So that is built in now, and so that's something that we have with DXP, and so I think that most likely meets the needs, and we're really pushing people to use the community selector as a means to navigate out. So that's being used. Now, what we are doing is we're focused on, within the community's portlet, one of the other things that we're doing is setting up the personal pages, and I think it would make sense to have My Communities portlet on your personal page so that you could then go to, have that be, if you went to your personal page, you could then navigate from there if you chose to. So that's being done. And then lastly, the variation on this was the ability to sort the communities via the line office. And our thinking there is that we've already gone and set up categories that are organization specific. And so some of the portlets, for example, the documents, media, the asset publisher, those are what we call category sensitive. meaning that, and let me just show you an example of this. So if we go to the science sharing section, it's an example of how this behaves. So you have a categories navigation on the right, and then you can select the categories, and then that then filters. So if I wanted to see only content that's related to climate, you would click on this, and the document library then filters the content, and only those articles or documents that have been related to climate will show within there. So the idea is that we can utilize that capability rather than show strategic goals, objectives, and topics. We would show the organizations and the line offices, and we've already created those. And then the communities would be related to the line offices where appropriate. And then if we set up a similar scenario where we have the categories navigation, we'll be able to click on those and show the relevant communities. And this will just be a means for people exploring the communities, trying to narrow things down to be able to filter out and focus in areas that they care about. So that's requiring a change on our end, because today the communities portlet doesn't respond to selections within the within the categories navigation portlet. So we're having to make that change. But I'm hopeful that that won't be too difficult to implement. So those are a few of the issues that we're currently actively engaged in. Are there any questions?
Hey, Ken,
Yeah.
on that last one you were talking about, where we were talking about sorting, one of the, I guess, the original aspects of sorting that was hoped for was this dichotomy between communities that you're a member of and communities that you own. So I think way back when Kong Ming had asked to have the ability to sort of group the ones he was involved with as an owner versus the ones he just was a member of. Is that going to be part of the solution?
Yeah, I saw that in the request, and we are looking at that. I'm not quite sure. So I guess I would come back to the vid. I don't recall who. Well, I guess that was from NSSL. So the question there would be, so there are two different locations that I think that should potentially be, that change should potentially be made. One would be within the My Communities, specifically, we're trying to focus this portlet to be focused on community exploration. But if we're using it on someone's personal page, then it's being used as a navigation aid too. So I guess I don't have a clear idea at this moment how it would be best to do it. I mean, I think what Kong Ming had suggested was that at the top you have a section that would be communities that you're an owner of. The other is that we could do that through tabs. So we've got My Communities, Available Communities. We could do something else here, which would be, My Communities I Own or something like that. And then likewise, under the Select Communities, does it come into play there as well? I guess that's a question I would have, because we've got recent, we have My Communities. Should there be some sort of option up here that would allow you to filter it further to say, oh, these are communities I actually own? So those are some questions. One of the things, so I guess I need to add some of that to the ticket so that we can get some feedback on that from the client or from the vid. On the other aspect of these tickets is that they wanted to provide, and this is a great idea, and that is provide the activity level within a community. And so we had a lot of our meeting was discussing how we could potentially do that. So we want to give some sort of indication when you're exploring communities as to how active the community is. And so I think I put within the ticket itself what we're thinking there. So let me go in. I'm trying to remember if it was in here or the other one. There are two of them. So it was the other one. So it's related to virtual lab, tag sensitive, field line office. Okay, so this is identify the activity level of the community. And so if we look at that one, so this is what we're thinking. Let me make this a little bit bigger. Okay, so we're looking at like the number of recent posts within the forums, recent wiki entries, recent web content, articles or edits, recent logins by community members. I'm not so sure about that one. Recent blog posts and recent documents added, edited, downloaded, viewed. Liferay already has something called social activity counter table, and so we're looking to see if we can potentially leverage that. So we've got some outstanding questions there, but I've asked the developer to look into further. So if they're already logging all these events, then we could potentially go hit that table, get all the necessary information, and then give weights for each of these different types of activities, and then add it up, and that would be some measure of the activity level within the community. And that's something that I think is desperately needed as the number of communities grows and grows. And you can see that now from our landing page that we have a lot of communities. We're almost up to 500 communities. So for people to be able to find that is important. So, all right. Any other questions or comments?
In regards to the agile development, Ken, that you're talking about, definitely agree, like it. I liked what you said there briefly about asking for VIT feedback.
Yeah.
And I'm also kind of trying to figure out for the VIT ranked items, what's the status? Where do we find the status?
Yeah.
How does that in the agile development? You might do a sprint. So do we see that that's part of any issue is part of a sprint? How do we see that, etc.?
Yeah. So that was using the VIT tickets, the development tasks that we have impact scores for is a logical first step for us to basically query that. So those would all be in the backlog. We would then go through and identify the tickets based on the prioritization and the level of effort associated with them, and then also the resources we have in terms of expertise who could do what. We'll be assigning those to a release. We're trying to do releases monthly, and then we're going to do either 1 to 2 week type sprints where we have something by the end of the sprint that would be viewable. It would probably be deployed out to the development environment so that you guys would be able to go in and see it and see the progress and make sure it's meeting the needs, the desired needs. So yeah, each of these things you'll be able to see the releases, you'll be able to see the sprints, you'll be able to see the activity and where those fall. So, and I know that that's something that hasn't always been, or that's something we're working to improve. So.
Okay. So yeah, once you get that, because that would be good.
Yeah.
You could maybe see everything's tagged with a release number or something like that.
And the way it'll work is that you're not supposed to spend a huge amount of effort on planning things out more than a month or two ahead. It's more you're focused on this release and maybe the next, and you're putting those issues within those releases to be worked on, and with the intention that they would be released at the end of the release within that month. But
so are you doing this?
Go ahead.
So are you going to do this while you're still doing the normal stuff, or are you holding on a little to get the agile development process set up?
So what I'm doing is I'm working with a subset of the developers initially, just I've got about 4 or 5 developers that I'll initially be spinning this up with, and so we're going to test it out, see how it goes. I think it'll go well. There are a few of us that have been doing some of this, but informally, and it's best for us to be using the tools and capabilities within VLab, because that's, that'll get us in a position to be able to help others out, when they want to do these things too. So, things being agile development. So.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay.
I appreciate this, and hopefully the team
sure.
is kept in the loop, and also as you work on some of the other stuff that you may be working on in the meantime, keep in the vet in the loop as well, as you always do.
Yeah. All right. So that's it for me, unless there's any other specific questions. Okay.
Thanks, Ken.
You're welcome.
All right, John. Looks like we got a couple of issues to be ranked, or they were ranked.
Yes, so we have done, let me bring that page of our website up so folks can see. So now we have these first 2 are the ones that were being considered for ranking by members. And we've got, as you can see, very good responses. The only organization yet to chime in is NESDIS. And I've solicited their input. But given the amount of input we've had thus far, we're probably in a good position to go ahead and generally close it out and go ahead and update the tickets to reflect our new impact scores, as our consensus has pointed to. Is that what the group would prefer to do? Or we can always wait, and I can continue to work with NESDIS to get their input.
I'm good with proceeding. It looks like we've got, like you said, a consensus there, but I'll defer to anybody else if they have anything beyond that to say.
Okay, well, great. So then let the record show that the team is in agreement on an impact score of 8 for our first issue involving a new watcher field for Redmine, and then an impact score of 7 for the something that would benefit, say, an SCP migration, project by allowing multiple people to be able to watch an issue category. And so I will update our tickets to reflect that, and that will get fed into the VLST and hopefully their agile development process as they begin to prioritize based on our impact scores. All righty. So let's see, that brings us, I guess, to the open forum. And maybe I can sort of lead things off, because I believe we have one, one candidate issue that has cropped up since we put out the agenda. And Jessica had mentioned that she might want to discuss this before the team. So Jessica, would you like to give us a little bit of information on this ticket 38295?
Sure. So it's just an issue or a proposal to include video content not hosted on YouTube and then linked, but actually hosted on VLab. And since some offline email conversations, I've followed up with the person who requested this to see if there's like a specific issue with having to host it on YouTube, or a benefit that they would get to help kind of further explain this. But otherwise, I mean, I think it's fairly straightforward of what the request is.
Does anyone have any questions or thoughts on this particular user-supplied suggestion? I think Ken's still there. I will mention one thing just so that folks are aware. So as the user alludes to, we have, as the Virtual Lab support team, encouraged folks to place their videos on YouTube versus on the VLab, because as you probably know, these files are quite large. And so as you begin to pilot more and more videos, the VLab's use of resources becomes, impacted in that way. So this would be a change to that. And I guess it would make a lot of sense, at least from our perspective, to have perhaps a sense of where the benefit the user believes lies from doing this approach of putting them on the VLab.
Yeah, this is Ken. So I'm guessing, based on the fact that they're coming from a forecast office, that the only significant benefit that I can see, and there may be others, is that if they're trying to reach the video content and they're inside the AWIPS network and it's hosted within YouTube, it's not going to work. So I suspect that's the issue here.
That makes their comment make more sense, that they wanted to do training for AWIPS videos.
Yeah.
So that
There's
actually two reasons. But I can say that one of those reasons is what you mentioned. But there is another reason, and that is that our access to YouTube is, in some sense, a bit of flux and stuff like that. We have access through our Google contract, and that's always a little bit in flux, combined with the fact that we may want to just host content internally and not have to put it on YouTube. That's another reason why using VLab to host video content would be a better approach.
Okay, so you're saying that if the content was sensitive in some fashion, that by doing it in VLab, we could...
Yeah, not wanting to put it on
private. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. So.
And also, again, the use of YouTube is provided through the Google Apps contract that we have with Google. If that ever goes away, we have an issue there.
Yeah. Yeah. So from an architecture engineering, that's not really. I'll just make an obvious statement. If we were to move in this direction, as John indicated, the potential impact on bandwidth and storage space could be quite significant. If we and this is something that we within the VLab support team itself are looking at doing too, is that we're going to start creating like 30-second to 90-second short videos, tutorials and things like that. Our plan was to have those all reside within YouTube and then point to those. But we know that for many people in this day and age, myself included, I would much prefer to sit and watch a short video than to go out and read a user's guide. Now, sometimes that's not the case, but I think we'll have more of a reach at our audience by doing that.
This is Todd. The other thing I'd add to that, just speaking from my, at least NOS with our cloud migration, is it's what we, for video, if we don't put a video on YouTube, our first choice is really, in our case, Microsoft Azure, where we drop the files out on Azure storage, and then we optionally choose, depending on how we have to disseminate the video, if we want to use things like the Azure Content Delivery Network or Azure Media Services, because the cloud provider's infrastructure runs circles around anything we could maintain at NOAA. and we just pay as you go. So if an office has to put a terabyte of video out, they know they have to pay, you know, $25 a month per terabyte to serve it. I personally don't think VLab is the right place for large video.
Yeah, so I would make the suggestion that maybe have the VIT rank this, but that I think this is a more strategic discussion and goes back to the strategic planning team. And I don't know, I wasn't on the last call if there was an update on that. John should tell, but in general, I would redirect to the strategic planning team and discussions about where VLab should or should not go. And, you know, a cloud solution, which, you know, Todd, I understand some have access to. The Weather Service hasn't been offered that cloud.
Different problem. You're right.
Yeah. So, you know, those are the kind of things that, but it's a very worthwhile strategic planning discussion, I think.
Yeah, I think at the last meeting, Steve Smith indicated that he plans to at least for now table the effort to develop a strategic vision so that for the foreseeable future, there would not be any ongoing effort to incorporate this information, say. You know, I just throw that out because that's the reality of where we are now.
Yeah, so I don't know. I just, from my perspective, I would say rank it, and then we can, you know, move it towards a more just strategic discussion. But first rank it, and then we can, with the acknowledgments of these discussions that we had today, and we'll continue to have.
Okay.
Because if we say that it's a need, which I believe, especially for the Weather Service, with the use inside of AWIPS and stuff like that, there's some sort of need. How we might meet that need is a future discussion.
Okay. Is the team in agreement on that then, that this is a now endorsed issue and should be put on a ranking spreadsheet?
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree as well.
Okay. Then I've now made that note. And thank you, Jessica, for bringing that to our attention.
Sure.
Okay, so we now then continue in our open forum with additional topics, if anyone has anything to bring to the table.
So I'll just mention, this is Ken, that while there's nothing formal taking place with regard to VLab in the cloud, I can tell you that I am leading an effort within OST to explore the cloud for prototyping, and we have funds that were allocated, and we've got projects that we're starting to prototype within the cloud. And you know, it's in this day and age where we're having, you know, struggling within the IDP environment, it's only natural for my mind to wander in that direction for VLab. So it is something that we're thinking about, but nothing formal. So.
Alrighty. Cool. So were there any things for the open action, or shall we, I'm sorry, for the open forum, or shall we move on to our review of open action items? Alrighty, perfect. Then I guess we'll just do some open action items. We're down to about 3 now, so that's good. We are still waiting for some finishing touches to be placed on the subscription manager. But after those last few changes are implemented, then we will have basically a demo of this latest capability. And that way we can see what users are able to access in terms of being able to subscribe people to really anything that makes sense from their perspective. So That still is yet to be done and will likely occur here pretty soon, perhaps early next month, I suspect. And then we have two other tickets, or I'm sorry, two other action items, both involving our strategic planning effort, which is now on hold. So we will basically postpone discussions of those for the future. Any questions on our open action items? Okay, so let me go through my notes here and see if I can come up with a fairly succinct list of open action items, or new action items, I should say. So we have, we were discussing about putting an announcement or two out on recent changes, feedback that we'd received and the, how it had been implemented. So I'm going to give Ken an action to go ahead and make those announcements. Then let's see. Okay. So we also had a ticket reviewed that was 38295 that Jessica presented, and that has been nominated. So I'll update that ticket to reflect the fact that it's now an endorsed issue, and we'll also add it to our ranking spreadsheet. I'll also go ahead and update the two tickets that we have now successfully ranked, providing the new ranking numbers on in the issues, and making sure that the VLST is aware of that. Let's see. Okay. I think that is it. Did I miss anything?
No, I think that was about it, John.
All right, so those three action items. And I will turn it back over to you, David, to close out the meeting.
All right, thanks, John, and thanks, Ken, and others for sharing on the call. And I guess we'll see everybody back in 2 weeks on October 23rd. So until then, everybody have a good rest of your day, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.